There we go. So it's recording, and then the link to the Jamboard is now in the chat. So if everyone wants to click on that and jump onto it. I think most people on this call were on yesterday's call, so have used Jamboard before, but if you've got a problem, just let us know.
How long do we have?
I think it's up to 10:30, but if it finishes earlier, then it's fine, and we can jump back onto the other call and join in any group discussion there if we want to. So I think this will be everyone, Joe, so take it away.
Take it away. Kia ora tātou. I think the most appropriate thing to do is to do a round of introductions. It is an EHA conference after all, and a networking opportunity. So I'm happy to start us off, I suppose. So as you know, my name's Jo Wrigley. My ancestors come from England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Cornwall, France, Iberia, and Spain. They on my mother's side, they were tended to be farm workers, peasants, and you know, owed their lives to various royal subjects. And on my that's my mother's side. On my father's side, my family were you know, middle-class English people who were vicars and engineers and good wives. I am the mother of 5 children. I have a lovely wife who I've been married to for some time now. Her name is Ree. I was born at the base of Te Urewera in Ngāi Tūhoi country, and my children are whakapapa to Ngāti Maniapoto, Tainui Waikato, and Ngāti Whātua. So it's a little bit about me. I've been with GoEco for 3.5 years, so I'm going to pass to Dawn, because Dawn is next to me on my screen. Kia ora, Dawn.
Kia ora. Yeah, kia ora, I'm Dawn. I'm the community manager for the Beautification Trust. I'm originally from England and moved over when I was 10 years old. I'm a New Zealand citizen, and I definitely feel like I'm a Kiwi at heart rather than a Brit. But yeah, my ancestors and my family are all from Great Britain and kind of Spain, Europe, that kind of side, but that's way back. Yeah, my family, my immediate family still, we all live kind of in South Auckland in the Pukekohe area, and yeah, really love the lifestyle that we have here rather than England. And yeah, love my job and love the opportunities that it brings, and really keen to hear about this korero today. So I will pass on to Michael.
Kia ora te iha whānau, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Great Lakes of Michigan, no waiu, ko Piratahi toko mara I tamariki ana aku, ko Waiheke toko Turanga Waiwai, ko te rangatira te Waiheke Resources Trust. Ko Michael toko ingoa, no reira tēnā koutou, tēnā katoa katoa. So for me, my family's, I guess, a bunch of immigrants. We keep immigrating country to country. Don't stay for more than a few generations in a place. Originally, my ancestors came from Germany, from a little town called Moss, Germany, which is my last name, though it was spelled different. So when my family emigrated, or that side of the family emigrated to the United States, they changed our name and made it harder to spell. Instead of just 4 letters, it became 5. So thanks, America. And then the other side of my family is Italian. So I'm from Sicily. That's heaps of family out there. and a huge family that came over to the United States on that side. I've lived in Detroit, Michigan most of my life, though I've lived in a few other states since then, traveling across the United States quite a bit. And then my wife and I decided to move to New Zealand, where we have now become New Zealand citizens and have 2 kids here that are born who have dual citizenship in 2 countries. So, but we've made Waiheke our home. My kids grew up at the marae here, and we have really close connections to people here on Waiheke, and have put down roots solid and forever, hopefully, until they immigrate, my kids, somewhere else. That's me.
Who are you passing to?
Who's next to me? Jess, next to me.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Jess Bradley, and I'm in Rotorua, and but I work entirely online for a couple of roles, including the admin for EHA. I've been in this role just over a year. I've been living in New Zealand since 2011, and from the UK originally. My family, I think, come from England, Scotland and Ireland. So very much, just a British mix. And yeah, I live with my partner and our dog, and that's me. So next along is Leslie.
Kia ora koutou. Ko Leslie tōku ingoa. I am based in Tauranga and have lived here for around about 20 years this time. Prior to that, I was living overseas, like a lot of Kiwis do. My ancestors originated from Scotland, and they came and established in the South Island, and I have a real affinity for the South Island, and I think it's because it's in my genes. I'm an avid trail runner, and I did a race once called the Tussock Traverse, which was run by an organisation called the Tongariro Natural History Society, which is now Project Tongariro. And I was really inspired with what I heard about that organisation, and thought, I want to be part of this. So I've been involved with Project Tongariro for probably a good 10 years now. Been on the exec for the last 5 years, and just really love to give back to our environment and to everything, really. So that's me.
Passing to.
Sorry, team. Passing to Ellie.
Kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Ailey, and my ancestors are from all over. So you might hear the Aussie twang. I grew up in Australia, but my family are all a bunch of immigrants. My mother was one of the original 10-pound ponds back in Australia, back in the 70s and 80s, and her family, I think, generate back Ireland and England mostly. My name is Scottish. Don't think we have any Scottish in me. I think they got to page 2 in the baby book and gave up. And that's because they wanted a name that could work in both English and Japanese, because my father's originally from Japan, and his father was actually from Korea, which is a huge history in itself. So we've got a real mix in my family. Came to New Zealand back in 2011 and packed everything up as if I was staying for 6 months just to enjoy the ski season down south. And never left. So everything's still packed up as if I'm coming back. So I need to do something about that. Found myself in Picton, fell in love, and also fell in love with my partner. And we have a little 2.5-year-old now who's keeping us busy. And this is just the best place in the world to grow with a family. So definitely keen to give back to this beautiful place. And I came in a little bit late, so I'm not sure if anyone else has.
I think you can probably pick Anton.
Anton.
Unmute. Hi everyone, my name's Anton and I'm CEO of the Nelson Environment Centre. My history, so on my mother's side, it's We're originally from Invercargill, but Scottish descent. I don't know where the lines go back to Scotland. I'm not that well versed, but through my mum's side, my family's both here in Christchurch and Auckland, and my immediate family reside here in Nelson. On my dad's side, it's Croatian. So we're from a tiny little port city called Zadar, and the province within Zadar, or the little suburb on the coast, is called Balkanias. I was very privileged when I was a child and back in Croatia. I got to go to the family church, Catholic church, and my family's documented back through that church by about 950 years. My Croatian family are farmers. We make wine, grow grapes and make wine. None of that posh stuff that you get in a bottle. We're talking about the good old-fashioned table wine, the flagon, so that's the Croatian descent. My immediate family have my wife Holly. She's an Aussie who I met when I was working over in Oz, and we've got 3 children. My daughter Eve, who's 13, and I've got twin boys, Atticus and Otto, who are 10, and keep us incredibly busy. I've been with the Nelson Environment Centre 4 years now, and I think it's an incredible privilege to serve my community through this work. So with that, I think Laura for EnviroHub.
Kia ora koutou. Yeah, I'm Laura from EnviroHub in the Bay of Plenty, based up in Tauranga. I've been with EnviroHub, so I was trying to work it out yesterday. I think it's coming up 6 years. And I'm originally from England. I moved to New Zealand back in 2000, so I feel like definitely now New Zealand is home. It probably took about 10 years to stop referring to England as home, but now I'm very much settled here. I have a couple of children, a 15-year-old boy and an 11-year-old girl, and they keep me extremely busy too, juggling them and work and all the things that that involve. My ancestry is from England and Wales. I haven't investigated it as much as everybody else seems to have on the call, so I must put that on my to-do list for when I have a spare few hours. So yeah, really privileged to be here. I'm really looking forward to Jo's korero. It really resonated with me what Jo was saying in her introduction. So, but unfortunately, I do have to shoot off early too because I have another meeting in town. I'll pass on to Rena.
Kia ora tātou. Aroha mai for my late jumping in. We had a bit of miscommunication with the staff members about who was going where on the Zoom. So, ko rena kohere tōku ingoa. He ori au no te tairawhiti. I'm Ngāti Porou, rongo whakaata, te aitanga mahaki, me ngai tahu ki te Waipounamu. And also have Scottish, Shetland Island and Irish and a little smattering of Scandinavian whakapapa as well. Kei te noho au ki Tūranga Nui a Kiwa. Ahakoa ko taku tūranga waiwai, tata ki East Cape Lighthouse, kei roto i te rohe o Ngāti Porou. So yeah, living here in Tairawhiti, very much Tairawhiti based. It's very much home for me. But my tūranga waiwai is by as far east as you can get by the East Cape Lighthouse at the top of our rohe. I have 4 kids and I'm here representing Tairawhiti Environment Centre. Aroha mai, I don't know who's next on the list to pass through, sorry.
That's fair. Let's see, Janet.
Ngā mihi kia koutou and aroha mai from me as well. Sorry, Jo, but I was really looking forward to this session. So my ancestry on my dad's side, I'm 5th generation in Aotearoa, and they originated through Scotland and the Shetland Islands, and were part of a manse in Lerwick up there. If anyone's been up there, basically all the plants go pretty much horizontal. Some of our cousins have been back taking photos in between raindrops and things, and then came, so the part of the country that resonated for them was Central Otago, and so they settled around the Clutha down there and tried to farm, and followed the great moves north, ended up in the Waikato in Ohura, a small town there in sheep country, but during the Depression had to walk off the land and ended up coming to Auckland and planting marram grass during the war and things like that. And we ended up in urban Tamaki Kaurau. From that side of my family, on my mum's side, the Jewish side of our whānau, from Central Europe, she was born in Poland, and her ancestry is through Ukraine and Russia and Germany, depending on where the pogroms were going on at the time. So they also looked to get out of Dodge and came down through Australia, Adelaide initially, and Sydney, and then to Wellington, and they moved north as well. So mum and dad met in Tamaki. Myself, we are living in, so I was born on the North Shore near Kaipatiki Stream, which is where I'm now working in the project, which is really beautiful to come back and practice down the road from where I was brought up, know all the back streets. And but I met Westie, so we're in beautiful Black Sand Tahinga, and I'm very involved in our community out here. So a bit of the different tastes of parts of Tamaki as well. We have 3 boys, and we've got living in a earth house that we've shacked up in out here. So kia ora to everyone, and thanks, Joe.
Kia ora. Fiona.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Fiona Lavanaho. I work at EHA May Plenty with Laura in Tauranga. I am originally from Otutahi, Christchurch, but I think like a lot of people on this call, I come from all different parts of the United Kingdom. Ireland, Scotland, and England, not Wales though, maybe. So that's a bit about me. I have 3 children, and regardless of where I'm from, this is Tauranga Moana is definitely where I want to be from for the rest of my day. So I'm loving it here. So I hope to live here the longest I've ever lived anywhere, which would be 8 years. So so looking forward to breaking that running streak. And I'm just having a look who hasn't been yet.
Jasmine and Joanne.
Yeah, so I'll pass over to Jasmine.
Sorry, unmute button wasn't working. Kia ora. Ko Jasmine Aho. I am at the Whaingaroa Environment Centre, and some of you may know it as Raglan. And I'm originally from the South Island, born in Waimate, brought up in Oamaru and Christchurch. And then after years of travelling overseas and living overseas and everything, I settled in Whaingaroa coming up to 10 years ago. I've got an 11-year-old daughter as well who goes to school here. So yeah, I now see this as my home. It's probably the longest I've ever lived in one place, which is, it's pretty good coming up to a decade here. I'm really well settled in the community, and I can't see living anywhere else now.
Thank you. Joanne.
Kia ora. Sorry, I'm really dark. It's just the way the camera is positioned. So I've been in New Zealand 17 years. This is home. This is where my heart is settled. This is where I connect to the land and the ocean. I'm originally from Manchester in the UK. I don't know a lot about my family history, but my grandparents were Geordies, and their background came down from Scotland. into Northern England. My other grandparents' side came from Ireland, so I'm sort of general Scottish, Irish, English. I don't know if there's anything else. I feel like there is something connected to this side of the world. Haven't done any DNA testing to find out where your heart feels, hey. I work with Kaipatiki Project and work with Janet, and have done for 3 years. I live about a minute's walk from where our nursery and our gardens are, and the Estelle Reserve Network, which is on the North Shore, which is where the big bush that we sort of concentrate and where the foundations of the organisation began. So very connected to this space and looking after it. And it's kind of me.
Well done. Thank you, everybody. Now, anyone out? Fiona.
No, I've been.
You've been? Sorry. I should have remembered that. That's terrible. Well, thank you everybody for joining us and for sharing some of your, ancestral knowledge. It's a really key part of the understanding that I believe we need as Tangata Tiriti, or practitioners in that space. There is a Jamboard link, so it might be really helpful for people to click on that. If you get it in the chat. And you'll see that there is some pages there, and we will just go straight to the top. Are we all good with that? Of course, I could also share the screen if that would make it easier.
Sorry, what do you mean go to the top?
Sorry, to the second page.
Sorry to interrupt, Jo. Can anyone else hear a repeating drum in the background?
No. Oh, I can now.
I've got a weird thing going on. It sounds like I've got a drum beat. I'll mute that and see if I can work out what's going on. Sorry, T.
No, I could hear that as well, yeah.
Thanks, Anton. Okay, so I'm on the Jamboard. Hang on, I just need to find it again. I've got a quote around intentional change, and I guess probably I need to explain to you what we mean by Tangata Tiriti practice development. As we've all just shared, where many things are, we've shared our ancestry and Papa, and that is our identity. It is the people who we are. Tangata Tiriti practice development is around what it is to be a good treaty partner, and the document we're talking to is Te Tiriti or Waitangi. And my assumption is that everybody in this group understands why. Throughout this journey, one of the, we started thinking that we'd do some treaty training because that's what Pākehā do. That is our starting place. Like the whole world started at the treaty. And what we've learned in that process and what we try to do in the workshops that we facilitate is get people to understand that actually that's just a point in history. It means very little as Tangata Tiriti practice, and it also means very little for Pākehā and Tauiwi. And I say little in that for Pākehā and Tauiwi, there is so much more for us to learn in regard to ancestry and to the political influences of that. There are some really good resources out there. There are some things that are absolute key to the study in this area, and those are understanding our whiteness for white settlers, understanding the characteristics of white supremacy, being prepared some therapy around that, because it's huge. And actually, one of the things that we discovered when we went on this journey is that we were sitting there looking at each other going, we're white supremacists. And we did that because we looked at the characteristics and everything that we think is good practice. Everything that we know about being a good citizen, everything that we know about being a good person, everything that we know about being a good organisation and an accountable organisation has a background in the characteristics of white supremacy. There are some really good resources in this space. I encourage you not to go to places. I think that it is a learning, and once you identify, then you become conscious of them, and then there is a pathway of challenge that goes with that. And then that led us on to an amazing speech by Ani Makairi, and what it is to be a charitable organisation in Aotearoa that is a good practitioner of Te Tiriti or Waitangi and what that means. So that's the first part of our Jamboard. And I can't tell you how. For every organisation, it's your own journey. For every individual, it's your own journey. And for Māori, this is like a lived experience. and reality, and I don't want to make light of that. So I just want to acknowledge this workshop, and that this is the conversation we're going to have now. So is everyone on the Jamboard? Yes, we're all on the Jamboard.
Yes.
Cool, cool, thank you. So we all know how to use the Jamboard. Yes, excellent, nice, very good use of a post-it. So one of the challenges laid down to us was around the role of charitable organisations and how we get in the way of Māori in relation to our work in the environment, our work in the social sector and the provision of social services, but also the work in the environment. We compete with whānau and hapu for funding, and quite often by doing that, we get in the way of the role of kaitiaki. So Ani laid down a challenge. It's a great speech. I can send you the link, and it is and said it is just not possible to occupy a position of neutrality in the context of the colonial state. If you are not until it, you are enabling it. So yeah, I'm going to open the floor to anyone's thoughts or questions on this, because I don't want to tell you what to think about it. I'm just really interested in what you think about it. Help me with my practice development. No thoughts?
I was wondering if you could give some examples. You know, that's quite a confronting set of statements around being a good organisation, as we've traditionally defined it as NGOs, equates to being a white supremacist organisation. Can you maybe give some examples to illustrate what you're thinking about there, or how that translates. Kia ora.
Okay. So the characteristics of white supremacy, I won't put a link in now. There are characteristics of white that are inherent in colonial organizations. Firstly, the idea of a charity is a colonial and Western concept. It is designed to deliver a charitable service to a community through a Western lens, speaking, and that's the framing that I would give it now. The characteristics of white supremacy or white supremacist thinking in that space is that are the characteristics that are associated with something that is either or thinking, having a timeline, like, you know, this job will take this long, it's going to start here and it's going to finish here, and that's all there is to it, and that's how this project will be measured. The paternalism, the idea that we know better than the community that we're about, and even the idea that by knowing better we're serving this community, like we know what this community wants and we're going to do this because it's the right thing to do, is a characteristic of white supremacy. I'm in a terrible mind blank. So paternalism, either or thinking, evidence. The way that we look for evidence and insist on evidence, and we argue that someone has to provide evidence. They're like, nobody's story is true unless there is written evidence that substantiates it. And what we've discovered recently is that written evidence that substantiates an argument has to be from a white person. That's a characteristic of white supremacy. Are any of these familiar to you? Accountability and reporting to meet a target that was set before you started the project. So regardless of what happened in the project, you still have to report on the thing that you said you were going to do a year ago. That there is no flexibility there for human participation. Does that, you know, is this ringing any bells? Silence?
I'm definitely interested in what other people experience in their organisations. I think some of those things that you're talking about, isn't that just bad practice? I mean, if you looked at social practice as we hold it as good practice now, like action research and those kinds of concepts are really about building on what the real experience during research or during a project. But would you say that that's because we're starting to recognise that the Western approaches and frameworks don't work, and starting to recognise that we need to incorporate Māori frameworks in the way that we approach social research and projects now?
I would, I absolutely agree that there is movement in this space, but it also challenged the use of Māori frameworks without the underpinning knowledge and understanding of the concepts. So it's great, you know, and it gives us, but how do we measure our own intent in that space? So as a Pākehā organisation, we can write a great story about a mātauranga or te ao Māori concept that we've translated into an English concept. And it's a problematic practice for us because we do that for the pressure of funding to exist. And to create this work and to meet the goals. So as funders say that you need evidence of this, we send some team members off to study the concepts and we translate those into English, and then we apply it to our funding applications, and then we are awarded funding. But how do we take those concepts and understand them in a way that provides depth and breadth and meets good practice and isn't us working alone, require perhaps a sole Māori staff member to carry the weight of that journey. So I want to acknowledge that there's plenty of good practices out there and plenty of people who are doing the thing, but there's also really, really big gaps in how we see this and how we tick box things.
Kia ora, Joe. I'd just like to tautoko that kōrero, because what I see quite often is an approach whereby people who work in the sustainability realm and environmental mahi often talk about their values of being kaitiakitanga, whanaungatanga and manaakitanga. And oftentimes there is no concept and no connection between those concepts that are deeply rooted in te ao Māori and mātauranga Māori and actual Māori. It becomes this sort of abstract concept of kaitiakitanga being isolated and translated as guardianship or being a good carer and looking after the taiao, when the depth and breadth of kaitiakitanga is lost and missed, and there's no relationship underpinning that. And I think that's an example of an extractive relationship with te ao Māori and Māori. And also to your point about the responsibility for those relationships often falling upon the lone Māori in an organisation. And that can be a very, very lonely place to be. And it can put pressure on relationships within the organisation and that person or that group of people's relationship with their own whānau and hapu and iwi. It's not easy.
Kia ora. So, I'm not sure if I answered your question, Janet.
Well, I think this is a conversation and it's a process of inquiry. So I'm really happy that we're building an understanding. I'm not looking to you for the answer.
Thank you. I'll stop sweating now. It's a constant discussion. I think that one of the things that surprises people is how constant this discussion is in our workplace. So I need to be really clear that we do not profess to know all of the answers. These are just things that we talk about. We have a weekly peer-to-peer process where once a week for 40 minutes, the staff get together and one staff member presents a project. Once every 4 weeks, so we're learning from each other and we're learning each other's projects. Once every 4 weeks, we have a peer-to-peer process, which is our Tangata Tiriti practice development, where we actually have a facilitated conversation. We work with one of our partner organisations, which is the Basket, and they come in and we talk and provide space to talk about how all of what, our learning. So the staff, anyone with new learning in Tangata Tiriti practice talks about it then. We get to ask ourselves some hard questions, and this Ani Makaire quote is one of the measures we have, like, how are we decolonising the system that we're working within? Because we can't just talk about it, we must have something to make that happen. And then what are all of the mistakes that we've made, or our perception of the mistakes? How have we stuffed up? What has been the learning from our stuff up? And talking about that together, as well as how we make amends for that, learn from that, and if there's any ongoing conversation. And there's always space to do that, and to do it in partnerships. But that is us, that is how we do it. It's not necessarily what will work for other organisations, and I acknowledge that. So I guess my question is, as an organisation, what do you think the intentional changes that you have made, make, or are planning to make? Or as an individual? But really, this is a thought board. I want to acknowledge that sometimes these things are really confronting to us because it's not what we know. It's not our version of history. It's not our experience of history. And it's our partner's perspective on what they need. As Tauiwi organisations, we talk a lot about partnering and working with. But one of the risks that we have in that is that actually what that translates to is asking Māori to provide resources for our learning. Confronted in doing our own learning is a discomfort that we need to sit with and feel comfortable with the discomfort while we understand what our role is in Tangata Tiriti practice, because it is a practice. Good treaty partner is a practice. Any thoughts?
I have a few, if that's all right.
Cool. Yeah. Get in there.
I usually talk too much in these things, so I'll try to keep it brief. For me, a lot of these words are quite difficult and confronting, because it challenges how I even perceive myself. Like in this, I'm sorry, I'm looking at this statement here on the page 2. But like neutrality, in itself, I feel is a quality I strive towards. But when it's paired with the colonial state, then it becomes very confronting. So there's a dichotomy there where I feel at odds with this, and the statement is almost like a block, but I see where it's also like a pushing forward. It's like you have to have two minds about it. You can bring neutrality in as long as it's outside of that context, and within another that you're creating. So I get that, and I think that's kind of where I try to sit. So I'm trying to express this quote because I feel like we're just stuck on it. Like it's so confronting, and it's like challenging who you are as a person, which is okay as long as you take it out. I guess the whole point for me that I'm trying to make is that if you really consider these words outside of that context, they aren't bad. And also, I don't necessarily see myself as an advocate for dismantling things. It feels very confrontational, and I'm trying to be better about that in the ways that we operate in general. So again, taking it out of the context and then doing what I normally do as a person, as a human, and try to put it into a context that is outside of the colonial state. So I think this is really, for me, this is what it feels like. It feels like I have to take this statement and find out where I'm biased in the colonial state and where I act in a colonial way, and then do the things I'm used to and what I feel like inside as a good person, and by being neutral or whatever, and really pry it away from that and put it into a new context. I think that's what we try to do in the organization as much as we can. But I think, again, there's always room for growth, and potential, like consciously taking it out of that context, I guess. Yeah.
Kia ora, thank you. I've just put in there, identify our own bias.
if I may contribute, Joe. Can you hear me okay, team? No.
Yes.
You can hear me.
Yes,
okay.
and there's no drums. That's great.
Yeah, sorry about that, team. I worked out what that was in the background. Apologies for that. I just want to follow on from Rena's comment around tokenism. And it's something that I struggle with as a leader of the organisation, and my role, to engage. Like I struggle to find this balance where I'm trying to have diversity within the team, as with the organisation, and the way that we engage, and we don't engage with local iwi. I'll be quite honest with that and own that, and it's a real struggle for us in terms of understanding the if I may use the word politics, with I think we've got and this is where I think we have 7 or 8 local groups, because there's a little bit of ambiguity between 2 groups. Like, there's a lot of challenges there, and so I feel quite often kind of caught between a desire to support the development of the organisation, a desire to support the development of myself, but not wanting to offend or in some way bringing back to that tokenism. I feel like it's disingenuous. And I've seen a lot of, in my own opinion, I've seen a lot of disingenuous approaches because, or engagement, because it's become a box ticking exercise for fundraising. And so, I've had feedback from iwi groups just like, please don't knock on our door again. It's like, and not that we've gone that way, but you can sort of see, I guess it's sort of paralysis with lack of understanding a pathway forward, and paralysis of not wanting to offend. And I guess that's just pure ignorance kind of shining through, I think, with that. That was a very, very clumsy way of trying to articulate my point of trying to identify a pathway forward and a pathway of engagement that's done with respect, I think, is where I'm trying to get to, and not just box ticking or tokenism or some sort of a representation of we're doing it right because we hired a local iwi member. It's just that doesn't feel appropriate to me. So I don't have the answers, Joe. I'm trying to work it out.
It's really helpful, actually, Anton, because one of those characteristics I was trying to frame before is actually the fear of making mistakes. Pākehā and Tauiwi have a huge fear of making mistakes, and I think one of the best descriptions of it is our inherent fear of singing waiata, that we can't do that, because actually what it boils down to is that we don't believe we're competent enough to do it, so therefore we're scared of it. Does that make sense?
Totally.
So I do, it's something that we actually sort of jibe each other about in the workplace, because when somebody says that they're too frightened to have the next part of something and we explore it, it is nearly always they're frightened of being wrong. And it's a cultural thing for us, something that we own, something to consider as part of our practice and development, in my view. It's my view. But thank you, because I think it was a really great summary of one of the things, and that being paralysed here is an almost inherent part of this journey. So thank you.